Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. For more than 3 decades, Intel didn't just dominate the semiconductor industry. They literally shaped the very foundations of the modern world. But today, we're unpacking a truly staggering narrative. We're going to look at how the undisputed pioneer of the microprocessor, a company that frankly seemed completely invincible, somehow managed to lose its crown. Hundreds of billions of dollars. That is the staggering market value Intel has lost in its fall from grace. I mean, it's almost difficult to comprehend that scale of wealth just evaporating. And it establishes a really profound mystery right out of the gate. How exactly does a seemingly untouchable tech giant with that massive of a head start fall so incredibly hard? What in the world went wrong behind closed doors? Well, to understand the fall, we really have to remember the peak. You remember Intel Inside, right? That tiny blue sticker wasn't just some clever corporate logo. For millions of users, it was an absolute guarantee. It meant faster performance, superior tech. If you were buying a PC from Dell, HP, Lenovo, or Acer, you weren't just picking a CPU, you were making sure it had that exact sticker. From the outside looking in, they were completely untouchable. So why were they so untouchable? Well, by 2010, Intel was basically operating as a fortress, and it was all thanks to the IDM model, or Integrated Device Manufacturer. Put simply, this means a single company owns both the brilliant design process for the chips and the massive fabrication plants, the fabs, that physically build them. They controlled their entire supply chain end to end, and that gave them a nearly unfair competitive advantage in speed, cost, and quality over literally everyone else in the industry. Let's move to and see how this builds over time. Because Intel was so immensely successful with that IDM fortress, their internal culture started to shift. That incredible strength basically became a gilded cage. They became pathologically risk-averse. The mindset shifted from, hey, let's innovate, to let's fiercely protect our robust profit margins. They dominated the PC and server markets so thoroughly that they literally stopped looking at the horizon. And that, my friends, laid the groundwork for a slow-moving train wreck. That blindness led to their first glaring red flag in 2007, the mobile miscalculation. When the mobile era arrived with the iPhone, Apple actually offered Intel the chance to build the chip for it. And in a moment of sheer dramatic irony, Intel turned them down flat. The leadership looked at it and thought, the mobile market is simply too small, and the profit margins are way too thin. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just a miscalculation. It is, in hindsight, the single worst strategic fumble in the history of Silicon Valley. While Intel rested on its laurels to protect its power-hungry desktop chips, the entire world shifted to a mobile-first, power-efficient architecture. And Intel was just left behind. But it wasn't just the mobile revolution they missed. A massive physics gamble was rapidly approaching. You see, as transistors shrank down to unimaginably small sizes, the old ways of manufacturing just couldn't keep up. Continuing that rapid pace of innovation required an entirely new process called EUV, or extreme ultraviolet lithography. To do this, you are quite literally dealing with fragile light that gets absorbed by air, meaning the entire process has to happen in a vacuum. It uses the most perfectly polished mirrors in the history of human engineering to etch these transistors. It is an incredibly complex, downright physics-defining technology. Listen to the specs for these EUV machines, because they absolutely defy belief. Each one is built exclusively by a single company on Earth, ASML. They cost well over $200 million a pop. They weigh 180 tons, and they contain over 100,000 precision-engineered parts. The sheer absurdity and monumental cost of adopting this new EUV technology was frankly terrifying for any chipmaker. And this brings us to the ultimate fork in the road. For every single chip maker, the big question was, do we risk billions on this unproven EUV tech or keep improving what already works? Well, Intel looked at that $200 million price tag, looked at the insane complexity, and chose to play it safe. They tried to squeeze more life out of their existing machines to avoid the financial risk. But TSMC, a factory in Taiwan that almost nobody outside the tech bubble knew at the time, made a totally different choice. They basically made a deal with the devil. They partnered with ASML and risked billions. And that bold gamble? It pushed TSMC ahead of Intel by a full technological generation. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the total paradigm shift it represents. While Intel struggled with its aging factories, the industry underwent the fabless revolution. This is a brilliant business ecosystem where companies realize, hey, we don't actually need to own the factories. They focus solely on designing the chips, and they outsource the incredibly hard physical manufacturing to specialized foundries, like TSMC. It allowed the brightest minds in the world to split this immense workload and focus purely on what they do best. So suddenly, you have the old guard facing off against the new wave. Intel, the classic IDM, is stubbornly trying to design and manufacture everything themselves. But the new wave is fabless. You have brilliant architects at Apple and NVIDIA doing the design, and the EUV masters at TSMC handling the manufacturing. Intel found itself fighting a brutal two-front war. They were losing the design battle to the innovators and losing the manufacturing battle to TSMC. They were being squeezed from both sides, trying to do both jobs and failing at the whole shebang. To see exactly how bad this squeeze was, just look at the power efficiency comparison. For years, Apple used Intel processors in every single Mac. But when Apple finally ditched Intel and moved to their own M-series silicon, which, importantly, was manufactured by TSMC, the results were absolutely staggering. They didn't just match Intel's performance. They totally eclipsed Intel's legacy chips in power efficiency. It wasn't even a contest anymore. So, who were the ultimate beneficiaries of this new fabless model? Well, because NVIDIA didn't have to spend billions building and maintaining their own massive factories, they were able to pour every single dollar of their R&D budget right into AI architecture and design. TSMC perfected the cutting-edge manufacturing, and there sits Intel at the bottom, stubbornly sticking to the IDM model, trapped trying to fix their broken manufacturing yields while desperately trying to catch up to nodes TSMC had mastered years prior. And while Intel was stuck fixing those yields, the 2020s arrived and the AI train completely left the station. The company Intel once barely even considered a competitor, NVIDIA, suddenly became the most important company in the world. Their GPUs were the only chips capable of training the colossal AI models that power everything from ChatGPT to autonomous vehicles. By the time Intel woke up and realized they really needed to pivot, the market value gap had grown into a vast chasm that honestly may take decades to bridge. And this brilliantly illustrates why all of this matters on a massive global scale. Today, chips are the new oil. This isn't just a fun story about a corporate rivalry or missed stock earnings anymore. It's a harsh macroeconomic reality. Global governments are now waking up and treating silicon as an absolutely vital strategic resource. Which brings us right to the CHIPS Act. Governments around the world are suddenly pouring tens of billions of dollars to try and bring chip manufacturing back home. Why? Because of the sobering geopolitical reality that resulted from Intel's fall. The entire world basically woke up and realized, oh wow, we have become dangerously dependent on one single island in the Pacific for the most vital technology on Earth. I want to leave you with the final thought to chew on. If dominance is never permanent, who will lose the future next? Intel's story is a profound reminder for all of us. The moment you stop taking risks in order to protect your past, you have already forfeited your future. It wasn't just a trillion-dollar gamble that changed the fate of one company, it shifted the balance of power for the entire world. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and always keep your eyes on the horizon.